Okay, it's 3 o'clock. Good afternoon. Welcome everybody to the MARESUNEX seminar. Welcome everybody here in the room and those who are joining us remotely. My name is Dr. Peter Mullner, and I co-lead this seminar together with Dr. Steve Crowley and Dr. Richard Elliott. I again give our little spiel. After introducing the speaker, our speaker will give a 40-minute presentation. At the end of the presentation, we will discuss in small groups some questions that the speaker has provided. The students that join us remotely will go to a breakout room, and our guests remotely have the option to go to a breakout room and discuss those questions for 5 minutes, and then or just stay in the big room and then rejoin us all here for a Q&A following that brief breakout. So with that, it is my great pleasure to introduce Tim Arnold, who has over 50 years of experience in hard rock mining. He has held positions in mining companies ranging from an hourly laborer to chief operating officer. He has spent most of his career either operating or developing mines. Mr. Arnold graduated in 1982 from the University of Idaho with a degree in mining engineering and completed an executive MBA certificate program from Northwestern's Kellogg Graduate School of Management in 2000. Mr. Arnold served as the president of the Society for Mining, Metallurgy and Exploration, SME, and received quite a long list of reputable awards. I just mentioned a couple, namely the William Lawrence Saunders Gold Medal from the American Institute of Mining, Metallurgy and Petroleum Engineers in 2019. And in 2025, he was awarded from the University of Idaho an honorary doctorate degree in engineering. Please help me welcome Tim Arnold.
All right, thank you. Everybody hear me okay? Okay, good. Well, when I agreed to speak here, I think I should have looked at the schedule a little harder because nobody wants to follow Mackenzie Lyon in a speaking engagement. And I'm assuming she was fantastic. She's a great woman. So number one, these are my opinions, okay? They apply to my personal journey in the industry that he just explained. Number two, there's going to be some salty language. This will be a PG-13 presentation. Please brace yourself. And this has been pretty much cobbled together from mostly from a class I taught at the University of Nevada at the Mackey School of Mines. Name of the class was Mine Management. So it's very management focused, and it's also very mine focused. I realize not everybody here is going to be a miner, and certainly some of you might not wish to be supervisors or managers down the road, but I hope there's enough grains of truth in here that it can help anyone in any profession and basically any industry. So this is the rough agenda today. I think it's fairly self-explanatory, except for maybe Arnold Axioms. These are little grains of knowledge that I and a couple others have come up with. Most of them I came up with. I stole a few. I've documented them through my 50-year career, and so I've kind of distilled them down to 50 years of learning in a few sentences. I was not a good student. When I was walking down the hall at the University of Idaho at the College of Mines, and the department head, Jack Hoskins, grabbed me and he said, "Tim, come with me." And we went into the dean's office and he said, "Sit here." So I sat at a couch at the back of the room, and Jack Hoskins went up to the dean, Dean Miller, and they started having a conversation. I was not part of this conversation. I was just sitting and listening to the conversation. And it went kind of like Jack Hoskins says, "What are we going to do about this Arnold kid? He does good one semester, then he screws up the next semester. He just doesn't take this college stuff very seriously." And the dean said, "Well, what do you want to do? He goes, I think we should boot him. Let's kick him out of school. And it would have been fair to do that. Anyway, they carry on this conversation, and I'm just sitting in the back of the room sweating bullets. And they finally came to the conclusion that they were going to kick me out of school. And then Jack Hoskins, after a pause, says, you know, I've called all the people that he worked for, because at this point I'd worked every summer. I'd taken an entire year off to sink shaft in New Mexico. And so I had a lot of practical mining experience. And he said, I talked to all the guys that he worked for, and they all liked him. So he might be an idiot at school, but he seems to be a good employee. So think we ought to give him another chance? And I think the dean said no, but Jack went ahead and said, okay, well, let's give him another chance. And they didn't kick me out of school. So what did I learn while I was at the University of Idaho? Although I kind of joke about being a poor student, my brother tells people that he knows somebody that went to the university on academic scholarships and academic probation all at the same time. And that was me. And so I'm not proud of that. And I honestly, one of the regrets I made is not paying enough attention in some of the classes that I thought I just wanted to get through. So don't be a Tim. Having said that, I don't ever remember in my career picking up a resume and putting it at the top of a stack of potential hires because the person had a 4.0 GPA either. You know, once you get out of school, and I'm going to talk a lot about this, once you get out of school is where your learning starts. So George W. Bush was quoted as saying, to those who received honors, awards, and distinctions, I say, well done. And to the C students, I say, you too can be president of the United States. I didn't brown nose at all, but I did see a lot of it around me while I was going to school. And I saw that it can be successful with a certain personality type. Other things I learned, that summer work that I did saved me from being kicked out of college. And, you know, from what the department had said, if I hadn't worked well with others, if I hadn't met and impressed some people at the mines where I was working my way through school, I would have been booted out of school. So this networking and working well with others is going to be a theme through part of this conversation. And finally, you know, getting into college, actually through my youth and at school, you know, I had some issues. I had some real tough issues to live through. And the bottom line is, so will you. Those are some of our best education. So here I am with my girlfriend, which has now been my wife of 43 years. I'm in my cap and gown. And my mom took this picture. And she was so proud that I was finally graduating. And she came up from Colorado to Moscow. And she's sitting in the crowd, and Jack Hoskins, the department head, gets up in front of everybody at the commencement. And he says, today, you know, I'm proud that you're all mining and metallurgical engineers at the University of Idaho. I want to remind you one more time, you don't know shit. And it wasn't that we didn't have, and that my mom was not happy about that, you know, 7 years in college and he doesn't know. But the bottom line, his point is you've got a great education, and I did. You know, I had a great engineering education, even though I got poor grades. But where you really learn when you get out of school is when you get out of school and you apply what you've learned in the field, in whatever field you're at. So having said that, this is going to be the very first Arnold Axiom interlude. Say that 3 times fast. So your first 5 years out of school, pick a job based not on how much you will learn, or on how much you will learn, not on how much you will get paid, not on the promotion potential, and not on where you're going to live or lifestyle balance. How much you will learn should be your only criteria. Get those first 5 years in, get the first 10 years in, whatever it is. You'll be able to pick and choose from all of those things later in your life. I'm now retired. I'm getting to do everything I want to. But the bottom line is focus on that foundational first few years of your career to be able to build towards being able to pick and choose any one of these. So got out of school in 1982. That red circle is how many mining engineers were graduated during a 3-year period. The highest ever. And there was a big downturn in mining. So I couldn't find a job. Graduates were up and there was a multi-year down cycle. We graduated 7 people when I graduated. 2 got jobs. One of them was a 4.0 GPA and he went to work for the Bureau of Mines, and the other one was me. And my first job out of school was as an electrician. Those are in quotes because I didn't know anything about being an electrician. What it was is I had worked at some other places. A guy needed somebody to just pull cable, hang cable. You know, I was a laborer again. And once again, what he did is he says, I'm going to hire you, Tim, and I want you to be a grunt laborer, but I'm going to hire you on one condition. If you tell anybody here you're an engineer, I'm going to fire you. It was $19 an hour in 1982. I can guarantee you I didn't tell anybody because I was making really good money. My next job, that lasted about a year. Next job, I was a contract miner. I started again as a laborer and worked my way into a contract miner. Took a lot to be able to call yourself a miner back then. So I'm really proud of the fact that I was able to do that. So I had 5 years of experience before my first job where you could say it was within my degree, and I had to go to South Africa to get a job as what they called a learner, but it was basically a supervisor or an engineer. So what I learned was, in those 5 years, is miners work hard, and it's not just a truck driving job. It's night shift. It's working in freezing cold or unbearable heat, wearing the most uncomfortable stuff, the most miserable of places. It's working 3 weeks in a row. It's missing your kids' games or plays or parent-teacher night. It's getting up sometimes at 3 a.m. and coming home at 8 p.m. The 5 years as an hourly miner were the foundation of the rest of my career and the greatest learning I had in my entire career. And Jack Hoskins was right. I didn't know shit. Every one of those little arrows is a place I worked. Not everyone's a complete vagabond the way I was. But I was in the underground industry, and it was a tough industry for a while. So these are all the places that I've worked. My wife and I moved 26 times in the first 32 years of marriage. My kids went to 6 different schools before they graduated from high school. My son was born in Africa. And if you ask my wife what I did or what she did for a living, she says, I packed and unpacked Tim's crap. So this is my career path. Again, once I finally did get a job as an engineer, kind of worked my way through the operational oriented, worked at mine sites. All the orange boxes here basically were at some mine site. I set a goal that I wanted to be a general manager by the time I was 45. And that was a stretch goal at the time. I wanted to stay at mine sites until my kids got out of high school, because that way, at least, especially once you became a staff person, you could go home at night, you could see the kids' games and the parent-teacher things and stuff like that. And then after my kids got out of school, I decided to become a corporate puke, and that's the green boxes here. So my last full-time job, well, shouldn't say that. My second to last full-time job, I was the chief operating officer for Integra Resources, which was starting the Delamar mine, which some of you are going to go visit. I spent 5 years as a COO there. Kind of retired, working for an engineering company now, mostly because all of my friends are at conventions and things like that. And it allows me to continue to do that. And they love me doing that because I know a lot of people. We'll talk about that in a second. Now we're going to talk about people. Mining is very technologically and science driven. I'm lumping in engineers, geologists, biologists, all the scientists, all the technical people into the term here, technocrat. And technocrats tend to think that there's a logical solution to nearly any problem. That's certainly the way engineers think. That is absolutely not true with people. You need to understand people, and like anything, that's going to take some practice. First, we're going to talk about people from other generations. Then we're going to talk about personality styles. The generational stuff, there was a lot of information that went around on how to talk to millennials and X and Y's and Z's and things like that. Well, I'm going to talk a little bit about how you talk to my generation, but more importantly, the generation before me. It's the unfortunate truth that with age comes responsibility. Note, I did not say wisdom. That is not true. It does, but responsibility does come with age. The difference between when I was your age and today is, for me, I was managed by people that came from the greatest generation. Today, I'm guessing the old farts in the industry are going to be either boomers or millennials. That'd be my guess. I'm retired. I don't have to care about that anymore. And it's vitally important for you to understand how these people think. So your coworkers, subordinates, and most importantly, your boss. So my bosses were from, as I said, the greatest generation. They survived the Depression, the Dust Bowl, World War II, or the Korean War. And these were some really, really, really tough years and some horrible atrocities associated with them. But after living through all these hardships, how did the greatest generation portray these events to us when I was a kid? With really proud moments. They were real happy moments and honestly very inspiring moments. We were taught to just deal with it, rub dirt in it. They never complained. But when I was young, when you were told to do something, by God, you did it. There was no room for whining or whinging. And I'm not sure what you'll need to do to be able to understand the millennials, but you should learn what it's going to take to understand that generation. So you might not be surprised that this generation looked at management styles, which we're going to talk about now. So understanding generations you're working with, we're going to talk about the kinds of personalities. This is what we were taught in the 70s and 80s, the type A and B personality. This is about as deep as management got back then. We started off with this type A personality and B personality theory. So if you see the words here, you see the type A guy, you see hostility, you see triggered, short-fused, competitive. You've got the type B personality where steady work, enjoys the achievement, there's not the competition, things like that. So you're either a tyrant or you were your employee's friend. What we were taught was start off as a type A personality until you understand the workforce very well. And then you can start working your way into the type B personality, or at least take some of the attributes on it. If you're a type B personality in this example, quite honestly, you're usually not a very good supervisor. But a mixture of the two works well. And this theory seemed to work into the 80s. And as times progressed, we were taught that all people belong in some sort of a box. So we went from 2 styles to 16 different personalities. This is the Wilson system that you're seeing here, but has anybody here taken a Myers-Briggs test? A couple of you. You answer like 30 questions, and they can tell you a lot about your personality, and it's kind of shocking how accurate it can be. So when I taught that class at UNR for 7 years, I had everybody take the Myers-Briggs test, and the purpose isn't to understand yourself, although it gives you a lot of insight on yourself. What it is to understand how to communicate with someone else in one of these other boxes. So you can Google this. What you end up doing is understand how you would like to be approached, and then understand how another person would like to be approached. So I had a guy in that top right box that worked for me at the Lucky Friday mine in North Idaho. He was a driving driver. And I'm a analytical amiable. I'm more social, but I'm very analytical. And so we took the Myers-Briggs test, and then we had a coach, and we sat down together with the coach. And the coach says, "Okay, Tim, this is how you should communicate to the guy's name was Bear Hunter. I do not joke. His name was Bear Hunter. This is how you communicate with Bear. Bear, this is how you communicate with Tim." So I'm in my office on a Monday morning, and Bear walks in, and he says, "Hi, Tim." "Hi, Bear. How was your weekend?" It was okay." "What? Huh?" He says, "Did you catch any fish?" And I realize, okay, he's using this stuff. He's trying to talk to me. He's going to warm me up before he brings whatever issue I have. And I appreciated that. And so my response is, "What the hell do you want?" And he said, "Oh, well, the sump down on the 2460 is overflowing. I'm going to have to shut the shaft down for a half hour." I said, "Get it done. Come back and tell me when you're done." He walked out of my office on air. He loved the fact that I just went straight to the point. I really appreciated that he asked me that if I caught any fish, which I hadn't. So miners are a little jaded. So we miners took this system and we had to change the descriptors a little bit. So I always thought my brother was that top right box, the top right box. He always thought I was the bottom left box. But as it turns out, neither one of us were. And we still have a little bit of problem being able to communicate with each other to this day. So as I said, I taught 7 years. This is the results of the Myers-Briggs testing over 7 years of all the students I had. And you can see, because I had mostly engineering students, virtually all engineering students, they were more on the logical side and more on the visionary side. My point is, if you're a mastermind, learn how to speak to a performer or a provider. Learn how to communicate with those people and understand their personality. And no one ever should use these tests for hiring. This is to be able to understand how to communicate with each other. It's cool. I mean, Google it, take it. You can find out what president you're like, or famous actor or something like that. But you should never use it, because the last thing in the world is you want an entire staff of masterminds or performers. You need that mix. You need the diversity. So that kind of wraps up my discussions about people. I'm sure there are newer and better systems out there. Whatever it is, whatever makes it work for you, study them, understand them, and use them, practice them. Now I'm going to give you some recommendations based on my journey through mining. You're going to have many masters. You can't please them all. If you're a supervisor, you're going to have subordinates. You can't please them all. And you shouldn't try. The bad news is always given when it's discovered by you. Not hidden until it's discovered by somebody else, because that's just going to get you into some real deep trouble. This is incredibly dangerous. If you want to complain about somebody at work, do it at home with your spouse, or better yet, your dog, because they won't say anything. Not in front of the kids, okay? This world is incredibly small, and I don't care what industry you get into, it's small. And you may think that you're having a confidential conversation with someone, but it certainly can come back to bite you. And this doesn't mean that you can't be friendly with your boss. What it means is that if a problem arises, and hopefully they don't, but if you have a good boss, he's got to be your boss first. At that point, friendship needs to be basically a non-issue. So be careful, don't make the mistakes. This issue about your boss not being your friend has cost me a lot of money in my time. I have assumed that someone was talking to me, and we were, I put a lot of trust into these people, and it ended up, well, not working well for me at the end. So you got to be careful. If somebody says, "Oh, love what you're doing, Tim. You know, I'm going to give you a bonus next week or something like that. Or here's an agreement. Make sure you get it in writing. Make sure you sign it. Make sure you understand it very clearly. Also, just because you get along well with your boss, it doesn't make you entitled. And that's a big one where I see this. Guys are and this happens all the time. You're going to see this all the time, but stay away from it. And if you think you're going to get special treatment because you're a friend of the boss, then you're probably mistaken. Or honestly, it's kind of a crappy boss. Gossip gets people fired. As a matter of fact, I terminated an employee once because he was spreading too many rumors. It's hard to do. It's very hard to do. There's lots and lots of work to get to be able to do that, but it is possible. So we were working at a mine in southern Nevada, and people kept starting rumors, and they were, I swear to God, miners are the most rumor mongering people in the world. So the one that was really harmful was the mine's going to shut down in 2 weeks, 2 months, you know, next year, whatever. And so people start hearing that story and feelings come into it. There's people at the grocery store. Did you hear that the mine's going to shut down in 2 months? Oh my God. You know, we just got Sally into third grade. She's doing a great job. She loves her teacher. We love her teacher. Now I'm going to have to pack up and move to Elko again, you know, and stuff like that. And so that's where the feelings come in. So what we did is we had these stickers made up and we told the employees, we don't like these rumors, but we're going to tell you the facts. So you need to come to us and ask. If you hear a rumor, come to us, ask us about it. And we will make sure that you give you the facts. Got a little slide about how that works 2 ways in a second. And so when people come up to me and say, hey, what's this story about, you know, the mine's going to shut down, or, you know, we're getting a new superintendent. I was a superintendent. I'd give them a story sticker and they'd put it on their hard hat. And if they got to the point where their hard hat looked like an Ohio State Buckeye, I'd fire them because they were spreading all the rumors. That's a little bit of a joke. But it really got a lot of trust of the workforce in the management over a period of time, because when they asked us when they asked us about these things, we did tell them the truth. But also understand that politics are going to be played around you. Remember that thing about bitching about people at work with a friend? This is where it can bite you in the rear. The only thing that can protect you from politics being played around you and, you know, anything going on is your integrity and your professionalism. When we first started getting, they don't call it this anymore, but sexual harassment training, the first thing they said is, best way to protect yourself is don't do it. And, you know, you're going to be safe. That's true of anything like this. This is going to happen over and over again. One of the proudest moments was after I'd worked 6 months with a bunch of farmers near a mine that we were trying to open up. And we put an agreement together because everybody's worried about the water. And the farmers were worried that we were going to take their water. We weren't. So we put together this major agreement. And I was working with the farmers board, the whole group. And we finally got it done. And we went out to the public and said, this is the agreement, you know, and we were given millions of dollars into retiring water rights and things like that. And the whole community just blew up in my face. I wasn't negotiating with all of the farmers. I was negotiating with a portion of the farmers who were saying that they were representing all of the farmers, and it blew up. And I'm telling you, this was a really hard thing to get through. So once again, my philosophy, rub some dirt in it, go back to the drawing board. Now I got to talk to the other 50% of the farmers and and now they're all mad at me, and find a way to get through this process, which we did. Rules don't not only apply to you, but they're more important as you gain responsibility. If you're in a position of power or even seniority, people look at you for guidance, whether you like it or not. and you have to be the role model for others. Has anybody here heard the phrase, it's better to ask for forgiveness than permission? Okay. What does that teach? This is going to take a second. I have many scars from my time as a miner. My first scar came from my very first job. I was on a shotcrete crew. Shotcrete's kind of like a gunite on the inside of a swimming pool, but we put it on the tunnels underground to hold the ground up better. And I was a laborer. We had this accelerator that you added to the shotcrete to make it dry fast. The pH of the accelerator was above 11. So it was really caustic. One afternoon, the 55-gallon drums of the accelerator couldn't be delivered to the machine that needed it. So we had to carry it in 5-gallon buckets with no lids over very uneven ground. Needless to say, I slopped a bunch of it down my boot. And as we were getting ready to ride out of the mine, my leg was itching really bad. So I rolled down my boot and my leg was literally smoking. The shift boss, who understood just a little bit of chemistry, told the crew to hold me down, and he poured vinegar on my leg. Exothermic reaction, and it's a good thing he had him hold me down, because I would have killed myself bouncing off the drift. To this day, I have a little indentation on my right calf from this impromptu chemistry experiment, and it took a couple of years for the blue dye in the genes to work its way out. My next scar was when I was working as an electrician, and these are cable hangers, and you hook them on the I have to stop because I keep using underground terms. You have to hook them to the roof of the tunnel, which is actually the back of the drift, the roof of the tunnel, and then you come back and you put a electrical cable in it, and then you hook the second side up, and it holds up electrical cables. Back then, these hooks were sharp at the end. Placing these hangers was real tedious work. It was taking a ladder, going up, hooking one side of it, coming down, walking 30 feet, walking up a ladder. If the tunnel was low enough, I could grab that thing on one side and I could jump up and hook it. Well, you can jump up and hook it on the wire mesh, and then you can also hook this part of your hand on the other part of it, straighten it out. So you can just imagine there's a chubby engineer or electrician hanging from the tunnel until it gave loose, and I got a bunch of stitches in my hand. And that one you can't really see. On February 5th, 1997, Rick Smith, miner, age 35, was fatally injured in a fall of ground at 6 a.m. Smith had 7 years of mining experience, all at this operation. The partial conclusion of the Mine Safety and Health Administration accident investigation report was the accident resulted from the victim being in an unsafe location in relation to the material he was barring down. That was a quote from an investigation of a fatal accident. I was the underground superintendent at the mine where Ricky Smith was working. He was a co-worker and a friend of mine, as well as everybody else at the mine. He was a very likable man, very positive, real upbeat, one of the hardest working guys on the property. He came in as an entry-level laborer and distinguished himself as a great worker, willing to jump in and help anybody anytime. Just the kind of guy you'd want on your crew. Unfortunately, our last words weren't pleasant. He was irritated about the events of a company golf tournament, and he left my office angry. And it's absolutely amazing how clearly I remember every word of that conversation after all these years. I felt guilty about the accident. What could I have done to prevent this accident from happening? Was our training good enough? Were we tough enough about safety? Were we walking the walk? There were thousands of other questions I was asking myself, and I just didn't have any answers. But I wasn't alone. Chief engineer came to me asking the same questions about himself, and so did the general foreman, the shift bosses, the geologists, the engineers. Everybody on the property felt that they had somehow failed, and we had. A fatality had occurred on our watch, and he was our friend. Nobody teaches you about how to deal with a fatality. You're on your own, treading on new ground. You learn a lot about character from it. Some people shied away, some people stepped to the front, but we all agonized. We all dealt with it in our own way, and none of them were wrong. It was the most difficult thing that I ever experienced, and you can't be prepared for it. The scar from the loss of Ricky Smith is deep and long. It runs from the top of my soul to the bottom of my heart, and that scar is never going to heal. Ricky went through 2 barricades to get to a place that he was killed. He went into an area that was absolutely forbidden to enter. I can guarantee that if you'd asked any person on that mine site if it was okay to go into that area, he would have told you no. No one will ever know why Ricky went in there, but clearly he decided to break a cardinal rule. So if you see me cringe when someone says it's better to ask forgiveness, you know why. On the other hand, sometimes we just have silly rules. Had an employee, actually at the same mine, James, and he called the office. He was supposed to come on swing shift, called the office and says, I'm not going to make work today. We were an hour and 45 minutes away from a place you could buy groceries, so he was down in Las Vegas getting groceries. His car blew up. Had his family with him. And so he came back to work the next day, and I went to him and I had an HR report and said, I need you to sign this. And he says, what's this? And I says, we have to put it in your record. You have an unexcused absence. He says, why was it unexcused? I called in like 3 hours before work. I said, well, the rule is if you call in sick, you have to be sick. And there was a little bit of common sense behind that, because if people did it over and over again, we'd start asking them for doctor's excuses. And he says, well, but that was a very valid excuse. And I said, look, it's not going to be a big deal. You know, it'll go in your file. You've got a great record here. Don't worry about it. And he said, well, okay, I'll sign your document. But I would appreciate it if you would roll it into a little ball and stick it where the sun doesn't shine. I said, understood. So that following Tuesday, I went into the manager's meeting. He says, we got a really stupid rule. We're making our employees lie to us. And that's not right. And we need to change that. So sure enough, we did, and went back to James a week or 2 later. And I said, hey, here's your write-up. And I might have put a little Hershey syrup on it. And I said, you know, thank you for making us better. And I'll tell you what, that really went a long ways, again, to make management be appreciated at that mine. Some recommendations: when you come out of college, you're a little intimidated at what to do. You want everything to be perfect. Get over it. You can't be perfect. No one can. Make mistakes. Thomas Edison said, I have not failed. I've just found 10,000 ways it won't work. Also, there are certainly going to be some ups and downs in your journey. Learn to recover from the mistakes and the bad times. My version, as you know, was rub some dirt in it. Find your way to deal with down times in a positive manner. It isn't a bottle, because there's going to be some. And if you don't take my word for it, this guy supposedly is fairly intelligent who feels the same way. Okay, we're going to talk about communications here and some things that I've learned. Writing is not a natural skill for a lot of people, especially technocrats. It takes practice, it takes study, but if you do get good at it, it actually will, you know, it sets you above the standard. So I strongly encourage you to learn to write and practice that. Getting in front of people and making presentations is hard for many. Again, the only way to get better is practice. You can be the smartest person in the world, but if you can't communicate the message of what your work means, it will never be used. Be careful of emails. Read them multiple times when you get one. use complete sentences when you write them. I like breaking all the different thoughts down into separate paragraphs in the off chance that someone's going to actually read every one of them and answer all three of the things that I'm asking about. And while you're there, read other people's emails completely. Don't rush through it, and beware of the dreaded reply all. My wife's really gotten into trouble several times because she just hits reply all and then complains about her boss. And my pet peeve is to technical communications. And what do I mean by that? This is exactly how I was taught to approach a problem. There's a statement, a drawing, assumptions. You do the work, and here's my answer. And back then we certainly had to conform. What did we replace this beautiful, clear, concise method of communication with? The spreadsheet. I've had hundreds of people send me Excel files that look just like that. And then they'll call me up 20 minutes later and said, hey, I found the answer. You're going to sign that PO for $20 million on this new piece of equipment we're supposed to buy? No. You can hand your boss a document that has the problem clearly stated, the assumptions used to solve the problem, the calculations, and a clearly defined answer in spreadsheets. It just takes a little bit more. To be fair, this is my spreadsheet. And this is why it's important. As you go through college, you learn all sorts of math, but once you're out in the field, you use a spreadsheet. I mean, we use it for everything. So networking, where can you meet people? Well, first off, you meet them at work. You will probably meet lifelong friends right out of school. More importantly, you're going to have contacts that you're going to meet early out of school. Statistically, you have a higher chance of meeting your spouse or significant other at work than any other place. Remember not to burn any bridges along the way. And again, all professions are small professions. I highly encourage you to get out there and volunteer in the community. Giving back, it's not only rewarding, but again, you're going to meet people that you wouldn't meet at work or maybe in some of your other social situations. And this is, and it, it looks good on a resume too. This is a very important one to me. I've always encouraged employees that worked with me to get involved with whatever society or association represents them in their professional career. My society of choice was Society of Mining, Metallurgy, and Exploration, where I eventually became the president. Go to conventions. They're not boondoggles. Study, find out what the information, get information, learn from them. And lifelong learning is vitally important. Meet people with your profession because you never know when it's going to come in handy. I've always said through my work with SME, I'm 3 phone calls away from the world's expert on anything having to do with mining. Call one guy, he says, well, I know these guys are really good at it. I mean, this literally just happened a couple of weeks ago. Call the next person and says, yep, I'm really good, but this is the person you should be speaking with. So when you go out of school and you join a company, a lot of times they'll have core values. Really, really study the core values. I've established core values in a lot of places, and the way we did it was we went right down to literally at Delamar, we came up with our core values, and we literally, every single person in the company at the time was participated in it. And I think that that's the most important part about core values is that you get the buy-in from the entire workforce. But more importantly, you need to know what your core values are. Here are mine. These 3 sentences have gotten me through some really difficult problems. In not only my work, but in my personal life too. Spend time to learn where your core values. And I found these in the strangest place. It was an autobiography of a football coach, Lou Holtz. And once again, lifelong learning, you never know where you're going to get these lessons from. So constantly focus on improving yourself. So what did I learn at the University of Idaho? Going back to that slide versus what I learned in industry. Pretty much the same thing. You know, there's a couple extra things in there, lifelong learning. And I guess maybe I did know a little shit when I was getting out of school. So real quickly, Arnold axioms. This relates a lot to what I've already given you examples of. Okay. Just about the time you get some mess cleaned up, another big one comes rolling down the hill. Roll with it. Make sure you're one of those visionary, maybe you're one of those visionary people that saw it coming, but I was not that person. So once again, it's going to happen. It's not that your boss isn't appreciative of you. They just didn't live through this struggle that you did to get to this perfect solution. Forgive them for not squealing with glee when you present the solution to them. The key word here is team. Celebrate with your team. Those people understood how it got, what it took to get there. And if you're really focusing on celebrating with the team and rewarding the team, it's going to make you a very good supervisor, but it also makes you a very good team member. This is one of the only stolen ones I had. It is brilliant. And it's absolutely true in mining. I suspect it's true in almost any industry, but it's certainly true in mining. If you have to be honest and transparent with the people you work with, going back to the story stickers and focusing on the facts. I always had an open door policy. I encourage people to ask questions, but I prefaced it with this statement. You can't please anybody, but transparency, honesty is a two-way street. Next one doesn't need any explanation. Surround yourself with really good people always. Don't be afraid to hire some smarter or even more experienced than you. I've done that on several occasions, and every single time it worked out very well. And I apologize to the HR people in the room. This is actually Arnold axiom number 1. If there's a good human resource person, they're worth their weight in gold, but bad ones can be a cancer to a company. And at that time, I had a bad one. So yeah, learning to work with people is very important. Yes, there are going to be some hard times. Yes, getting out there, communicating well, networking is very mandatory, and all of it takes practice. But every once in a while, you have to take a step back and realize that you're probably living through the most critical and important time of your life. So make sure you step back every once in a while and smell the roses and enjoy it. Mining has been really good to me and my family. We've lived in some wonderful and beautiful places. We've raised our kids in places that we chose, and they turned out great. I've hunted and fished in some of the world's greatest locations. I've met the rich and famous, but they don't hold a candle to the family I have and the family of miners that I've had the privilege of working with these last 50 years. So with that, I'm ready for some questions, or you guys do what you do.
We will give a little break to Mr. Arnold and talk about these questions that we have here. Those remotely, students, please join the breakout room. Those others who would like to join that breakout room too are welcome, and we'll be back in 5 minutes. All right, let's get back together here and turn the room, open it up for questions. Who would like to start? Let's not be too shy this afternoon.
I did say you can ask me anything.
What was South Africa like, and how long were you there for again?
We were there almost 5 years, and we loved it. Absolutely loved it. You know, it was kind of intimidating going to Africa, as I mentioned, because we couldn't find work here. But God, it's a beautiful country. And I mentioned, I think my son was born over there. It was 40 or 50 years behind the culture we had come from. And we were there during the apartheid years. So, but yeah, it's a beautiful country. It's a little, be careful if you go over there today. Make sure you're going to the safe places because there's a lot more crime there today than there was when we were living there.
Did you live in any other countries?
I spent 3 years. I was living in Denver, but we were going back and forth to Cameroon, which is in north central equatorial Africa, trying to start a cobalt mine up there. That was much later in my career. That's after the kids graduated, actually. And so I spent probably 30% of my time in Cameroon, but we didn't move there. No. Went to Alaska, which is almost like another country. Spent 5 years there. That was
Awesome.
gorgeous too.
Thank you.
If you were to go back to your first semester at the U of I with all the knowledge that you have now, would you do anything differently?
Wow, that's a great question. Yeah, I think it's on. Absolutely. I took Calculus 1 twice. I took Calculus 2 twice. I took Calculus 3 twice. I took physics my last semester in school because I kept dropping it because I hated it so much. Yeah, if I could go back again, I've got the brains to get decent grades. I mean, I was never going to be a 4.0 student, but I could have. That Jack Hoskins guy came up to me and he said, my last semester in college says, Tim, you can't graduate with a 199 GPA. It has to be over 2.0. You know that, right? I said, I think I got it, Jack. So yeah, I would definitely have been a better student. The other thing I would have done is I would have studied, boy, don't tell my mining friends this. I would have studied geology a lot harder because it is so important in my industry, but there's this rivalry between geologists and engineers. And so I kind of poo-pooed it, and that was a mistake. I probably should have taken more geology or at least paid more attention because I'm lacking in that knowledge now.
Great, thank you.
So in the first question, you say life learning is important. And throughout your career, are you more specifically talking about through your work, or how have you expanded your knowledge? Is this through courses, books, or if you were to recommend once we get out of college, what's the structure like in your life to continue your learning?
When I got out of school, I never thought I'd want an advanced degree at all. And I actually encourage the students that I mentor, get out of school, spend 5 years in the industry, come back and get an advanced degree if you're gonna, but don't do it straight out of school. Certainly in my profession, I think that's good advice. But sure enough, I'm out many years and I got an opportunity to go to Northwestern to get an MBA. And I never really wanted to do that until I was quite later in my career. The other thing is I didn't think Northwestern would ever accept me with my GPA. And funny enough, they did. In an advanced, it was an executive MBA. So you're learning from other executives. And that was very valuable. I learned as much from the people I was taking the class from than the professors. So that's that's a great way to do it. The other learning, honestly, it's reading, it's going to the conventions and like I said, a lot of people don't like sending people to these conventions and things because they think it's a boondoggle. And I'll be honest with you, I have fun, but you need to focus on why you're there. And if they have an expo, you need to be out there working and finding out what it is. You need to be going to those sessions where they're telling you new things. I will say that about 5 years ago, I knew when I was going to retire, so I made a very specific point of trying not to learn anything new. I want you guys to go take over this industry and leave me alone. But yeah, and like I said, you can find it in all sorts of different places. I read the thing about Lou Holtz because I'm a huge Notre Dame fan. And sure enough, I find the core values that just gripped my soul. So yeah, it's you'll find it everywhere. I think that volunteerism is pretty important too, because then you're meeting people outside of your, your little clique.
My question is more focused on the management styles. I work as an analyst of maintenance for the construction for a while, and I was in charge of, I don't know, 50 dump trucks, 30 something heavy duty machines. And I had to deal with the scheduling of the maintenance and all of that. So I had to deal with a lot of operators and drivers of the dump trucks. And it was very hard because I was like 22 at the time. And finding that balance between being respected, like build that line between them and I, but also being human. So, which advice or lessons have you learned from that? Because I'm assuming that the mining industry is very similar in some terms with the type of workers or workforce that you have there. So,
Yeah. You know, you've got to be genuine. I mean, people see through you so quick. Um, and going back to you don't know shit, I hired a young lady to be, we were sinking a shaft in New Mexico, and I hired a young lady, and she came and she was going to be the shaft inspector. So she's going underground every day, and watching the work that these people do. And at one point, she goes up to the guy that had 35, 40 years of experience of sinking shaft, and she goes, "I think you're drilling the rounds out wrong, and you should try a different pattern in the shaft bottom." And he almost threw her down the shaft. I mean, he knew what was going on there, and she's taking this knowledge she learned in school and trying to apply it in the field to a person that had 35 years experience. So I think just being, obviously integrity, transparency, but just recognizing just because you have a degree or an advanced education absolutely does not make you an expert in whatever you're doing, and they will see through it. So just it's tough. It's really tough, especially with a group like that. I mean, engineers, when they get out of school and go to work, they get grief, because miners are brutal. So, I'm not going to tell you all the showers I had to take from different mean miners. So yeah, it's just got to be honest. You just got to be honest.
Yeah, I had a question on C that you have up there with major mistake at work. You keep saying that we don't know anything when we come out of university, and it is true. And so the chances of mistake at work is higher in our first couple of years of working in industry. And I guess the fear of that is also higher as like a new grad, because it's like, oh, they might fire me, or, I'm scared to do anything at first. So I guess I wanted to see if you would have any advice on like how to prevent that, like having that big fear, or just in general get over that, because it feels like it might be something to go against.
Well, I mean, if you worked for me, working for me would be different than working for some other people. I mean, this was all my opinions, right? You might have a person who completely disagrees with me, and you should never make a mistake. And at that point, then you're going to have to roll with those punches and make sure that whatever you're doing is good, and get a lot of help from other people to make sure that know that personality. We're kind of back to the personality thing. I encourage people to try things, and if they didn't all work and it didn't cost too much money, then well, we learned from it. What you'll get is a group of people that are out there trying new things, and 90% of the time they're probably working really well. So as far as how do you not be fearful of that, I don't know. I don't know if that's possible. You know, I just had this conversation with somebody today. At some point in my career, I could kind of pick and choose where I wanted to work and who I wanted to work for. And it's at that point in my career, I decided I'm not going to ever work for anybody I don't respect. And that made the last 20 years of my life much, much more pleasant. It made me have to hop around a little bit because if you brought in a boss and I couldn't get along with them, I left. So I don't know, if you can do that earlier in your career, but what you should never do is work for a tyrant. Doesn't matter what. You don't work for a tyrant. Go to your HR people, go to the good one, not the bad one, and try and get it fixed. But if you got a tyrant, just start looking for work, which is, it's a hard thing to say, but moving around the world didn't hurt us too much.
Thank you.
Hi, so you have a lot of experience working in the mining industry and working with a bunch of different companies. So I was wondering if you had any favorite companies, I guess, or like companies you think should be the golden standard for how a mine operates.
Yeah. Yeah.
I
These
can't read
guys,
that.
it's Integra Delamar. Those guys that you're gonna go visit, or some of you are gonna go visit on Monday. And I think you've had Emily Hendrickson and Dale Kerner in here speaking. They have put an incredible group of people together. I'll be honest with you, the only reason I'm not there anymore is because we had some management changes and I couldn't do what I just talked to you and I left, and then those people have now left and they've put a fantastic group together. It changes, I think here in Idaho, I think you've got some really good choices. I think Revival Gold, and I know mining, so I can't tell you about Micron or anything like that. But Revival Gold and Liberty Gold, great groups of people that they're putting together, and I spent a lot of time talking to them. What I found is I enjoyed working with the smaller groups because you have more impact and the core values are more truthful than the big, huge mega companies. So, the Barricks and the Newmonts and the Nevada Gold Mines, I liked working for them, but I didn't enjoy it as much as the smaller companies. And then, of course, the smaller companies were building. And I just liked that. That's what I did the last 20 years of my career is build mines, not operate mines. So you got some really good ones here in Idaho.
Okay, thank you.
Hello. So you mentioned the first job. The only criteria should be how much you'll learn. And I noticed that you even left out how much money you'll make. I was curious, at what point in your career did you start, or when do you start looking into, all right, now I have what I need to move towards a financial security, or this is where I want to work? Because I know some people live where they work and some work where they live. So yeah, I guess at what point do you start doing or looking for those things?
Yeah, for me, it was when I had a family, and I had enough experience to where I had options. I tell you, the only reason to pick a job is what you're going to learn. If you have one job offer outside of college, there's not much choice. You could go take it, but try and learn as much as you can. Nothing impresses me in an interview is somebody saying, "Hey, where can I be in 5 years? I want to learn a lot. How can I work at different departments so that I can learn the whole aspect of this industry, whatever I'm in?" But I'd say after about 10 years, you're going to be in a situation where you should start thinking about quality of life I've never really thought about quality of life, but you guys saw where I got to live, just by being in the industry I'm in. But certainly wages, that's awfully important. And I highly encourage you all to retire at 55 if you can, because it's way underrated. Retirement is so cool. So, wages are important, but you're going to have time to get there. That's the main point. You're going to have time to get to the point where you can start picking and choosing your jobs and picking and choosing where you live. And, I don't disrespect anybody who says I'd rather work at half the wage if I can live in this place. And Idaho's a good example of people that feel that way. Guys in the Silver Valley make 30% less than miners in Nevada. And the reason is they want to live in the Silver Valley. I don't blame them. So, but it takes a few years. You know, it also depends on how much in demand you are, you know.
Thank you.
There's no question in the room, but I might have a question. You talked about safety. Safety, I felt a little bit also it's a culture in a certain place. I think that's how you alluded to. So what recommendation would you have if somebody walks into a place and realizes the safety culture is not where I think it should be? And how would you go about that situation?
Well, that's a tough one. And there are, you know, I love bragging about the mining industry, but there are certainly places where that is a problem. Run away, I guess. I don't know. You know, the thing about the reason we've done so, when I started mining in 1975, we were killing 250 people a year in mining. The last decade, we've been in the teens. There's a huge, huge change of attitude and culture. So if you're working at any of these mines that I just talked about, or any of these major mines, you're going to have that culture. You're going to see it. It's the smaller operations that are making the sand and gravel and clays for you that probably don't have that same culture. I guess you can try and establish that culture, because the safety culture is 100% around we all protect each other. If I don't care what position I had in a mine, at the COO, if I was doing something unsafe, I expected a laborer, anybody on that property, to come and tell me, hey, you're doing this wrong. You know, you forgot your hard hat, or you didn't chalk your wheels, or whatever it is. And anybody in the mine site has the ability to do that to anybody on the mine site. And that's how we keep each other safe. So it's a cultural thing. I guess you could try and establish that by the way you act, and then talking with some of your other employees. I lost 25% of a workforce one day in an underground mine. There's 250 people working there, and I lost 25% of the workforce with one drug test. It was methamphetamines, and I tricked them. We did a drug test once a month. We came in and did a drug test. We knew that there were people doing it, but we couldn't figure out how to do it. So we did a drug test on a Friday, on a Friday, and then the following Monday, we had them come back and do the entire workforce. And so they all went home that weekend thinking, well, I'm safe for another month. And I lost 25% of the workforce. That put a huge burden on 75% of that worked there. But to a man, people came up to me and said, we're so glad you did that, because we didn't want to work with those people either. So you just got to, you know, if the management isn't worried about that culture, that's a huge problem.
Thank you. And let's look at time. It's 4:15. Let's give another round of applause and a thank you to Tim Arnold.
Thank you.